Hooyah! Hello and welcome to another video. I got my hands on a very sad Korg Poly 800 a couple of weeks ago, and I've been slaving away at it in my off time every now and then, and it's actually in a state now that it actually works. However, there was what shall I say, a lot of sinning involved. It kind of went like this.
Here's Johnny!
So after that debacle and cleansing my sins at the local synth church, well, here it is. One happier Korg Poly 800 that's not really a Korg Poly 800 anymore, but sort of. Shall we take a look at it?
Now before you all lynch me for cutting up that motherboard, hear me out. It was very rusty and crusty, unfortunately. So I salvaged what I could and redesigned the motherboard from scratch, using modern components. Here it is, mounted inside the synth. You'll have to forgive the wire mess, it's a bit of a prototype still. Here you can see the power supply, which produces plus and minus 5 volts. I used a 40106 oscillator that drives a power transistor. This then drives an LC circuit to create minus 5 volts. Next is the DCO and DACs. The DCOs on the original Poly 800 used divide down technology to create analog square waves. Unfortunately, the chip on my Poly 800 didn't work anymore, so I had to replicate it. Now replicating the Korg DCO IC would mean I would have to make basically a second motherboard, because it would involve a lot of components. So instead I opted to go the full digital route. I used an Atmega 32 overclocked to 20 MHz with 2 of its ports connected to 2 8-bit DACs. It also has one port connected to the 8-bit bus, so it can be controlled by the CPU. Next up is the noise generator and the Korg NGM 2069 filter. Both of these circuits are exactly like the original. Moving up, we have the sample and hold and the DAC for all the analog signals. These are also replicated from the original, though I'm just using a latch for the DAC instead of a port. And then a whole bunch of 8-bit latches to interface the various components of the synth to the CPU, such as the front panel buttons and the keyboard. There's also a second Atmega 32 which acts as a CPU. This one is clocked at the internal 8 MHz. All in all, a pretty complex circuit, but it replicates the Poly 800 pretty well. Of course I need some way to update the firmware whenever I like, so I added 2 DB9 ports on the back. And some stickers to make sure people know it's not an original Poly 800 anymore.
And this is how we program stuff. Built a little custom in-system programmer, which connects to the programming ports in the back here with a plug. And this is why I keep this bucket of screws, because this thing came without screws. Okay, so let's fuck around with this thing a little bit, shall we? That is quite wonderful. Now, before I start off, I wanna put some disclaimers here. Is that though I did my best to emulate the Poly 800 as much as possible, of course there are some differences because the DCO is different. It's no longer a digitally controlled oscillator, but it's a digital oscillator. So that being said, as you can hear, there's some aliasing in the high notes. Still looking into that to fix that, but at least lower registers just... I mean, yeah, that legit sounds like a Poly 800, I think anyways. Another thing is, the parameters are all the same, works the same too, but there is more of everything. I'll demonstrate this in a second, but there's more waveforms on this thing. Instead of turning each octave on or off, you can actually select a waveform per octave. So So you can do all sorts of crazy additive synthesis. I really like this system that Korg devised here, where we can set each individual octave and how each octave is mixed. It's a very simple and elegant system for additive synthesis, even though this is a subtractive synthesizer. I really wanted organ sounds. This thing's actually pretty good at organs. I select preset 21. I mean, that's a pretty good organ sound, but it's still with square waves. I just wanted to add a little bit more, so why not throw in some of the organ waveforms. Actually, which one was this? Okay, so I believe this is the 1999 preset by Korg. And this one, if I use the organ sounds, normally when you select an octave, so this is the 16-foot octave, normally it's off or on, but in this case we can go further, we can go deeper. So I'm going to select a waveform number 5. I'm going to do that for all the octaves. You get this sound. So that's like 2 organ waveforms layered. Maybe we can add some detune. No, it's already. That's a lot. That's a bit much. So yeah, this is one of the new waveforms. I just added these waveforms, so. Pretty close to perfect. There's a little bit of noise in there. See, you can hear it a little bit. There's a little bit of noise in there. There's a little bit of an error in the waveform, so I'll need to give it a little bit of polish, but man. And that's simply by changing the waveforms. I mean, we can go crazy with this. And that's pretty cool. So yeah, this thing really shines at like this really big pads and strings and organ sounds, and but you know, it is still a Poly 800, so it can do really good percussive sounds because of the digital envelope generators, which have an extra 2 stages, breakpoint and slope. And that means you can have a second decay or a second attack, like the waveform can go completely crazy. So yeah. This preset, this is the soft piano preset by Korg. Pretty cool and so, but very simple. So, of course you can offset all the octaves with different waveforms now. Now the waveform select on the Poly 800 actually isn't a waveform select. Rather, you change how the 4 octaves are mixed together. The oscillators on the original Poly 800 are just square waves, nothing else, just square waves. But Korg did a clever thing which they call step waves. We set the waveform to square wave. Well, in that case, all the 4 octaves are mixed together equally. Now when you select Sawtooth, 4 octaves are actually mixed with different levels. What you essentially do, you do additive synthesis with square waves. Of course, in my Poly 800 I kept this concept, so this still selects how it mixes the waveforms, either equally or half for each octave. But of course, since there's so many more waveforms, yeah, this puts a little bit more emphasis on kind of mixing those octaves, those waveforms together. Okay, so another thing I changed is the sequencer. The original sequencer of the Poly 800 was pretty cool, the way you can program it, but I again expanded upon it. Alright, I know what I'm going to do. So let's press record, clear it. The sequencer supports 256 events, which can be rests or notes. And it can do chords or single notes, any combination you like. If you want to play a chord, you can either play the chord or just play the individual notes. So if I want to, there, save it. There, that's a chord. This chord, do a rest. So you saw the step increment just now. And let's do some single notes. So you notice that I pressed twice. Once to save it, and second time to import a rest. Save, okay, and then we press record again and it's done, and then we can just press play. Yeah, that's actually a pretty cool sequence. And if you want, you can also play along. Let's say I want to select a different sound. Yeah, let's select this sound. I didn't really know what I was playing there, but so yeah, you can do chords. There's no limit on how many notes you can fit in one chord, though of course the polyphony does limit how many notes will actually be played. So that's the only limit really. The sequencer itself, it has no limits. If you want to use every note on the keyboard all at once, you can do so. Of course it's gonna sound a little bit weird because there's only 8 oscillators on here, and if you are in dual mode you only have 4 available. So that's the only limiting factor. That's it's a duck synth. It's a dog on speed. All the bread.
Is the duck exe stuff working?
Yes. I didn't know it could go this fast actually.
Whoa.
Oh my god. I'm actually surprised it handles that, by the way.